While Detroit's giants were busy showing off their chrome and roaring V8s, a small company from Michigan quietly built something extraordinary, a car so clever, so fearless, that it made the rest of America's auto industry question everything they thought they knew about speed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. In fact, it didn't even have a V8. But somehow, this modest six-cylinder sedan from Hudson managed to humiliate Detroit's most powerful names, winning races, rewriting engineering rules, and creating a legacy that still echoes through the world of motorsport today. This is the untold story of the Hudson Hornet, the car that dared to outsmart the system, outmaneuver its rivals, and outlast its own creators. A car born not from corporate power, but from pure innovation and courage. Because sometimes, legends don't roar into existence. They whisper, glide past the giants, and leave them wondering how they just got beaten by a family sedan. 1. The Golden Age of Detroit. The early 1950s were America's automotive dreamland. Detroit was booming, factories were roaring back to life after the war, and every new car felt like a symbol of freedom and prosperity. Big names like Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler ruled the roads, selling power, prestige, and that unmistakable post-war optimism. Cars were getting longer, lower, and heavier. Chrome dripped from every edge, and horsepower became a new kind of currency. The nation's highways were filling with rumbling V8 engines and big, brash designs that screamed confidence. But hidden in that world of excess was something different, a quiet rebellion taking shape inside a much smaller company. While Detroit's Big Three competed for flash and flair, the engineers at Hudson Motor Car Company were focused on something else entirely: performance through precision. They didn't have the deep pockets of Ford or the marketing muscle of General Motors. What they had was ingenuity. Hudson's team believed that speed didn't have to come from brute force. It could come from smarter engineering, lower weight, and better balance. And with that philosophy, they started building a car that would soon shake the entire racing world, a car that looked ordinary but hid a secret no one saw coming. 2. The birth of the step-down design. When Hudson's engineers set out to build something revolutionary, they didn't chase bigger engines or flashy fins. Instead, they reimagined what a car should be from the ground up. Their answer was a concept so ahead of its time, even Detroit's biggest players didn't fully understand it: the step-down design. In 1948, Hudson introduced this radical layout where the floor pan was dropped down between the frame rails, instead of sitting on top like traditional cars. This meant drivers and passengers sat inside the frame, not above it, giving the car a much lower center of gravity without sacrificing interior space. It wasn't just a styling trick, it was engineering genius. That lowered stance gave the car better handling, sharper cornering, and far greater stability at high speeds. And because the body and frame were integrated into one solid structure, it was also incredibly strong and surprisingly safe, decades before unibody construction became the industry standard. To the average driver, the Hudson Hornet looked like a classy family sedan. But beneath that smooth sheet metal was the soul of a race car. Every curve, every bolt, every inch of its low-slung chassis was designed for performance, not publicity. And soon, that hidden brilliance would take the Hudson Hornet from quiet underdog to unstoppable legend. 3. The Hornet Awakens. By 1951, Hudson was ready to unleash something extraordinary, a car that would take its innovative step-down design and give it a heart strong enough to challenge Detroit's best. That heart was the 308 cubic inch inline-six, a massive straight-six engine that looked humble on paper but was tuned to perfection. Unlike the V8s dominating the market, Hudson's engineers focused on precision over brute power. With twin H-power carburetors and meticulous tuning, the Hornet delivered around 170 horsepower, a figure that shocked everyone coming from a six-cylinder. But here's the secret: it wasn't just about raw numbers. Because of its low center of gravity and nearly perfect weight balance, the Hudson Hornet could outcorner, outbrake, and outlast almost anything on the track. While others were fighting their own heavy frames, the Hornet simply glided, smooth, composed, and unshakably confident. And when it hit the racing circuits, The world finally saw what this quiet machine could do. It dominated NASCAR, winning race after race against cars that looked twice as powerful. The Hornet didn't just win, it embarrassed its competitors, earning the nickname the Fabulous Hudson Hornet. Drivers like Marshall Teague, Herb Thomas, and Tim Flock turned the Hornet into a racing legend. Their sleek blue sedans roared past rivals with almost effortless grace, making Hudson the first independent automaker to completely crush the giants of Detroit on the track. In an era obsessed with flash, Hudson proved that brains could still beat brawn. 4. The reign of the fabulous Hudson Hornet. The early 1950s were Hudson's moment of glory. From 1951 to 1954, the Hornet didn't just compete, it dominated. In NASCAR's early years, when most believed only massive V8s could rule the track, the Hornet Straight Six became a symbol of precision engineering. Drivers like Herb Thomas and Marshall Teague turned the Hornet into an unstoppable force. Teague, known as the King of the Beach, was so connected to the car that Hudson gave him direct access to factory engineers. Every tweak, every carb adjustment, every aerodynamic refinement turned the Hornet into a fine-tuned weapon. In 1952 alone, the Hudson Hornet won 27 out of 34 major NASCAR races. That's not dominance, that's annihilation. The car's step-down design hugged the corners while others fought to stay on the road. Its twin H-power setup delivered torque so smooth and constant that rivals were left wondering if Hudson had discovered some secret formula. But it wasn't just about trophies. The Hornet became a cultural icon, a quiet hero that represented intelligence over arrogance. It was the underdog story everyone loved, a small company standing toe-to-toe with the biggest names in American automotive history and winning. Even Hollywood took notice. The Hornet's name started appearing in car magazines, ads, and newsreels. It was the car everyone wanted to talk about, the perfect mix of brains, beauty, and bravery. And for a while, it looked like nothing could stop it. But behind the headlines and checkered flags, a silent storm was brewing, one that would soon bring this unstoppable champion to its knees. 5. The fall of a giant killer. By 1954, the cheers had started to fade. Hudson, once the pride of innovation, found itself in a fight it couldn't win, not on the track, but in the boardroom. While its cars ruled the races, its sales were slipping fast. The market was changing, and the giants of Detroit were catching up. Hudson's engineering brilliance had always come at a price. Their step-down body design, though revolutionary, was expensive to produce. Larger automakers could afford constant redesigns, sleeker styles, and powerful V8 engines that captured America's new obsession with speed and flash. Hudson simply didn't have the deep pockets to keep up. And then came the final blow, the merger with Nash Motors, forming the American Motors Corporation, AMC. What sounded like a lifeline on paper quickly became a slow fade into obscurity. The Hornet name lived on for a few years under AMC, but the magic was gone. The step-down platform was retired, replaced by cheaper, more conventional designs that lacked Hudson's soul. Even NASCAR, once ruled by the Hornet, moved on. The competition was evolving, more horsepower, better aerodynamics, and massive factory budgets. Hudson's small team couldn't compete anymore. By 1957, the once mighty Hudson name disappeared entirely. No grand farewell, no final race, just silence, the quiet end of a legend that had once dared to defy Detroit. But here's what makes the story of the Hudson Hornet truly unforgettable. It wasn't beaten by lack of talent or engineering. It was beaten by a system that valued size over smarts, profit over passion. Still, even as the company vanished, the spirit of the Hornet refused to die. Because true legends don't fade, they wait to be rediscovered. 6. The forgotten legacy and revival. For decades after Hudson's fall, the Hornet's story drifted into silence. Collectors remembered it, racers honored it, but for most of the world, it was just another name lost to time. The factories were gone, the engineers had moved on, and the car that once ruled NASCAR existed only in fading photographs and whispered legends among gearheads. But legends have a way of finding their way back. In the early 2000s, An unexpected source reignited the Hornet's fame: Pixar's Cars. The film introduced a new generation to the fabulous Hudson Hornet, brought to life through the voice of Paul Newman as Doc Hudson. Suddenly, the world remembered. Kids who had never heard of Hudson were now asking about the real Hornet. Car enthusiasts started digging through history, discovering how this modest sedan once outsmarted America's automotive giants. Prices of surviving models skyrocketed, and museums began showcasing restored Hornets as reminders of what independent innovation once looked like. But beyond nostalgia, something deeper happened: respect. The Hornet became a symbol of what happens when a small team refuses to play by the rules. It wasn't about horsepower or money. It was about vision. Hudson had proved that intelligence and courage could still defeat the system, even if only for a short, shining moment. And as car culture evolved, that message only grew stronger. In an industry obsessed with power and image, the Hornet stood as a timeless reminder. Greatness isn't measured by size or sales. It's measured by impact. 7. The lasting influence on modern cars. Even though the Hudson Hornet disappeared more than half a century ago, its fingerprints are still all over today's automotive world. That low, wide stance you see in modern performance cars? The Hornet pioneered it. Its step-down design, once considered a strange experiment, became the foundation for modern unibody construction, a feature every major automaker relies on today. And that focus on handling over horsepower? Hudson started that too. At a time when other brands chased raw engine size, Hudson proved that control, balance, and engineering finesse could make a car faster than brute strength ever could. It's the same philosophy behind today's sports sedans and even electric performance cars that value precision over noise. Even beyond design, the Hornet's spirit influenced how carmakers thought about innovation itself. Hudson's engineers didn't wait for trends, they created them. Their small team proved that creativity could outshine corporations. It's a mindset that echoes in every startup, every independent builder, and every company daring to challenge convention today. And in a poetic twist, Dodge revived the Hornet name in recent years for a modern compact SUV, a nod to Hudson's fearless experimentation. Though it's not the same beast that ruled NASCAR, the badge alone carries decades of heritage. It's a quiet salute to the original underdog that changed American automotive history forever. The Hudson Hornet may have vanished from showrooms, but its legacy lives under every car that corners just a little sharper, sits a little lower, and reminds the world that smart design can still beat raw power. Because the truth is, Hudson didn't just build a car. They built a blueprint for the future. The Hudson Hornet wasn't just a car, it was a message. A reminder that brilliance can come from the most unexpected places, and that true innovation doesn't need a massive budget or a famous name to make history. It proved that courage, creativity, and pure engineering genius could rewrite the rules, even if only for a moment in time. And though the factories are gone, the legend still whispers through every curve of modern performance cars. Because long after the engines went silent, the fabulous Hudson Hornet never really stopped racing. It just found a new road to inspire.